Hi everyone! Yesterday I watched the movie Moxie, which was very enjoyable. It's about a group of high school girls who discover basically feminism. So I thought I would do a video on some of the best books I've read about this topic. I'm sure I'm missing lots of good books, and so please put your recommendations in the comment section. So the first book I have on my list is Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. Laura basically created in 2012 a website for women to upload their stories about, sexism. And she received, stories from all over the world and was flooded with examples. And so the book is basically an exploration of those witness statements, but it's sorted based on specific topics. For example, women in the workplace, girls, women in politics, and mix very nicely some research and statistics with the stories that she got on Twitter and on the website. But for me, it was really an eye-opener on how some of the things that happen to us on, almost a daily basis have been normalized in society, but are not actually normal. And until I read this book, I hadn't quite understood the fact that, a lot of society is putting stuff on us that when you think about it, we shouldn't have to deal with this shit. It's very easy to read, and I have to say it's very well edited, so you have like some colors in the book if you buy the physical copy. If it's your sort of first foray into, the feminism movement, this might be a good place to start because it's very easily accessible. The one caveat I would say to that is that a lot of the stories are from, or appear to be from, the UK, the US, like mostly high-income countries from the West. So if you're from a different culture, you might not relate as much to it. The second book I have on my list is Invisible Women by Criado Perez, which I read on Kindle. The book basically explains how not having data on gender and assuming that men are the default option has created basically a systemic discrimination against women. This was, once again, an eye-opener. It was mind-blowing. It was really well researched, but at the same time written in a very, very accessible way. And so you just go through the book. I can't say it's enjoyable because it was really frustrating. I was enraged just like reading the book, but it is very compelling. And ultimately, this is a book about the impact of not having a group of people represented in the data. And so you can easily imagine, whilst the book is focused on gender inequality, this actually applies to a lot of different issues, race being one of them. So some of the discussions within the book, you can basically replace the word female by people of color, and you'll get the exact same results. So the fact that the lessons can basically be applied to any sort of social inequalities made the book even more important in my view. I would say there is the same caveat as in the first book in that the research used is mostly UK and US based. But it's a very compelling read, super, super interesting. I would highly recommend. Next on the list is The War on Women by Sue Lloyd-Roberts. This is an amazing book. It's actually rated on Goodreads 4.73, which I've never seen for any books, but it only has 1,565 ratings at the time of making this video, which does not make sense. This is an amazing book, and so if there is only one book that you pick from this recommendations, just pick this one. So the book is written as a series of stories that highlight some of the issues that women are facing across the globe, as well as examples of women fighting back. It is a mixture of research and facts that are sort of interwoven with deeply, deeply touching stories and anecdotes. And it covers a lot of different countries from the UK, Ireland, Russia, Saudi Arabia, some countries in Africa. So it's really a sort of global look at the systemic issue that women are facing. Maybe I should provide a sort of warning for this book in that it covers some of the worst abuses that women are facing. So that includes FGM, female genital mutilation, sexual assault, human trafficking, honor killings, and things like that. This was okay for me, but if you think that you might be triggered by this sort of content, just be mindful. Unfortunately, the author died before finishing the book, so I believe the last chapter was written by her daughter, but it followed, I think, an outline that the author had prepared, and so it feels pretty seamless. The book overall, I cannot stress that more, is amazing. Everyone should read it. So please, please, please pick it up. And I want to use this time also to note that I'm on the board of a charity in the UK that is called 28 Too Many, that works to basically provide research and support the fight against FGM, female genital mutilation. So if you're interested in supporting the work that we do, I'll put a link in the description for you to donate whatever you are able to donate. Thank you very much. Fourth on the list is Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women White Feminist Forgot by Mikki Kendall. This is actually the only book that I've read on this topic of intersectionality. This is a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw that basically explains how different sort of social identities sort of combine to create new models of discrimination and privilege. So in this case, it is about how gender inequality and race inequality sort of merge to create a very different reality for someone like Mikki Kendall, who is an African-American author, woman, compared to someone, for example, like me, who, even though I might be facing gender inequality, I will never have to face race inequality. I hope it won't be a surprise to anyone if I say that the feminist movement has basically, favored white women, often at the expense of women of color. And so the book is basically a shout from Mikki Kendall to say, this is not okay, and to show, the reality of life for an African-American woman and how white women have contributed to this problem. So I haven't read a lot of books actually on intersectionality, and this was my sort of attempt to get a better understanding of that. So I can't really compare this book with other books on the same topic. For me, it was really interesting to read this experience, and I think it should be mandatory reading for everyone, especially white women. I have to say, though, I had a couple of issues with the book. The first one is that this is a very sort of US-focused book. Now, the fact that the content is about the US is not an issue for me. Mikki Kendall is using her own experience to lay out an issue, and so it's sort of normal that the whole book is about the US. That being said, it's the way she's writing about those issues that was a problem for me. She makes some cultural references that I had, no idea what she was talking about. I had a couple of times to stop reading and look on my phone to Google, who is this celebrity that she's talking about and what happened, to really understand what the point she was making was. And then the last sort of criticism that I would give to the book is that it often blurred the line between white women and white feminism, which in my view are very different. Feminism is a movement, and not all white women are part of that movement or identify as part of that movement. So overall, it wasn't a massive issue, but I thought that actually her point against the feminism movement, not including women of color, would have been, even more powerful if she had, created a clear line between white women and the feminism movement. I would really recommend, everyone reading it to become more familiar with this idea of intersectionality, and I would in particular recommend it for anyone living in the US. And the last book I'm going to mention is Sex Trafficking by Siddharth. This obviously is a bit of a niche. I have been really interested, partly because of my work, to understand a bit more about modern slavery, and that includes, bonded labor, but also human trafficking, including sex trafficking. So I picked up this book, and I was sort of expecting maybe something a bit dry and academic. And actually, it was a super interesting read, which is why I'm putting it, in this recommendation video. The author is a journalist who's traveled extensively to cover this issue, and because he's met a lot of trafficking survivors, he was able to again put a lot of first-hand stories about meeting with the survivors. And so it is once again a really good mix of stories, first-hand stories of the issue with deep research, statistics, and trying to show, what the issue is at the global level. What are the economics of trafficking human beings? How does it broadly works? What are the sort of key channels that are being used? And the author also suggests, a range of recommendations. There are really interesting discussions also, for example, around whether prostitution in higher income countries should be made legal, and pros and cons depending on obviously the ultimate results on women in lower income countries that are very often the victims of sex trafficking. So very obviously, there's also a warning for this book. It's about sex trafficking. This is not, a fun book, but I actually thought it was really well written and very compelling. And so I was super interested, and I read it without any issue from start to finish. I would highly recommend if this is something that you're interested in. If you've read any of those books, let me know what you thought. I'm super happy to hear other people's recommendation on this topic. I have another book actually on my TBR that I got for Christmas, which is called The Creation of Patriarchy, which I want to get to at some point. I'm not sure when. But yeah, let me know if you have any other recommendations. Bye-bye!